Hi, my name is Jordan, and today for my community video, I will be discussing how sound travels to the brain. This information is relevant to anyone interested in the study of neuroscience or the field of audiology. This topic is also related to speech language pathology due to the correlation between speech and hearing. First, I'm going to talk about what is a sound wave. So, sound waves are acoustic information that change from mechanical energy into hydraulic energy and then will eventually turn into electrochemical energy. So, the acoustic energy first starts at the outer ear. Some structures of the outer ear are the pinna, the concha, and the external auditory meatus. The pinna is the outside of the ear. It's a funneled cartilage that locates, collects, and funnels acoustic energy. The concha is the inner bowl of the outer ear, and it's important for funneling acoustic energy into the ear canal. The external auditory meatus is known as the opening of the ear canal. The outer portion of the external ear reflects sound toward the ear canal. The auditory system can be divided into two different parts: the peripheral auditory system, which is the outer ear, middle ear, inner ear, and the vestibular cochlear nerve, and then the central auditory system, which is the structures of the brainstem, the thalamus, and the cerebral cortex. So first, the sound waves enter the outer ear, travel down the external auditory meatus as acoustic energy. The external auditory meatus passes the sound waves to the eardrum. The sound waves then reach the middle ear, bounce off the tympanic membrane, which causes the three ossicles known as the malleus, incus, and stapes to move. The tympanic membrane is known as the eardrum. It functions as a drum, and as sound waves bounce off of the membranous layer, it transforms acoustic energy into mechanical energy. The ossicles are then pumping back and forth at the rate the sound waves are hitting the tympanic membrane. The ossicles conduct sound from the tympanic membrane to the fluids of the inner ear. Then, the ossicles act as mechanical levers and increase the pressure of sound at the entrance of the cochlea. The cochlea is a snail shell-shaped organ which is filled with endolymph fluid and is located in the inner ear. The cochlea is lined with hair cells, which are specialized mechanoreceptors that convert the mechanical stimuli into neural information for transmission of the signal to the brain. As the cochlea is being moved back and forth by the ossicles, the endolymph inside is moving. This is changing the mechanical energy into hydraulic energy. While the endolymph moves around the inside of the cochlea, the organ of Corti is located inside the cochlea. This contains specialized hair cells, which are known as stereocilia, that are moved by the waves of liquid in the cochlea. The movement, which is known as hydraulic energy, translates sound information up the auditory neuron, which is where it then becomes electrochemical energy. Next, I'm going to get into the cranial nerve function. So the neurons from the vestibular cochlear nerve travel through the cochlear nucleus. The cochlear nucleus is the branch of the vestibular cochlear cranial nerve that travels up to the superior olivary complex. The main function of the cochlear nucleus is to relay and integrate neural signals. The vestibular cochlear cranial nerve crosses at the superior olivary complex, which allows for binaural hearing. The superior olivary complex is important for the integration of auditory information, specifically the time and intensity of sound coming from both ears. This helps us to localize sounds. Binaural hearing. Binaural hearing is the ability to hear from both ears and locate the source of a sound. This helps when we're paying attention to different sounds that are in different locations. So the nerve travels up the pathway called the lateral lemniscus and plugs into the inferior colliculi in the tectum of the midbrain. The inferior colliculi is the auditory center of the midbrain. This area is tonotopically organized. It regulates our acoustic startle reflex, which allows us to suddenly move to an unexpected sound. Next, in the auditory pathway, from the inferior colliculus, the auditory nerve will then plug into the medial geniculate body, which is on the thalamus. The medial geniculate body will filter the information so it is condensed and a complete message can be sent to the auditory cortex. The medial geniculate body is an area of the thalamus that's important for auditory processing. It acts as a relay station and directs the auditory tracts from the inferior colliculus to the auditory cortex of the temporal lobe. Finally, the signal reaches the auditory cortex. The auditory cortex organizes into the primary auditory cortex, which recognizes the frequency and intensity of the sound. The message is then sent to the auditory association cortex, which is where we can then identify a sound. The central auditory pathway ends at the auditory cortex. It is located at the superior part of the temporal lobe. Damage to any area on the primary auditory cortex can result in an issue with sound perception or discrimination. This is an overview of how the anatomical functions of the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear work together to help bring a sound signal into the brain. It's important to learn the process of how sound is processed in the brain in order to fully understand how a patient with hearing loss is functioning. So, if there's an error within the process of sound traveling to the brain, it can lead to a hearing loss. There are three different types of hearing loss, which can depend on where the error occurs. So there's sensory neural hearing loss, conductive hearing loss, and mixed hearing loss. Sensory neural hearing loss is hearing loss that's caused by problems in the inner ear or the vestibular cochlear nerve. If this area is damaged in the inner ear, it would most likely be involving the stereocilia in the cochlea. It can be caused by exposure to loud noises or specific medical conditions. Conductive hearing loss. This is hearing loss in the middle or external ear dysfunction. The cause of conductive hearing loss can range from wax buildup, an ear infection, or when the middle ear bones are fixed due to osteosclerosis. Medical or surgical treatment for most types of conductive hearing loss can usually result in a full restoration of hearing. Mixed hearing loss. This is hearing loss due to a combination of conductive hearing loss and sensorineural hearing loss. Mixed hearing loss can be due to genetic disorders, infections, or head trauma. This is an image of the different types of hearing loss and their causes. For example, sensorineural hearing loss can be due to aging, noise damage, drug side effects, auditory tumors, or a loud explosion. Conductive hearing loss can be due to fluid in the ear, foreign objects, allergies, a ruptured eardrum, or then impacted earwax. So, if there is a suspected hearing loss, a hearing screening can be given to determine if further testing is needed. This is where the speech language pathologist or the audiologist would come into play. If an individual does not pass a hearing screening, then an audiologist can perform a full hearing evaluation to determine the type and amount of hearing loss. A pure tone audiometry test determines the softest sound that a person can hear. During the test, the person would wear headphones and hear a range of sounds directed out to one ear at a time. The audiometry tests are conducted in a quiet and soundproof room. Headphones will be placed on your head. You will sit still and asked not to talk. The headphones will be connected to a machine that delivers tones of different sounds of speech to your ears one at a time. Then the audiologist will ask you to raise your hand when you hear a sound. Another type of assessment is an auditory brainstem response. This is a test that checks the brain's response to sound. This focuses on the function of the inner ear and the acoustic nerve and the part of the brain pathways associated with hearing. There is also otoacoustic emission, so OAEs. This is a test that checks inner ear response to sound. Overall, these tests are important to determine the type and severity of hearing loss. The results can be then applied to treatments or therapy approaches for hearing loss in a clinical setting. here are the references that I've used. Thank you for listening.